What is the risk for the midterms next year if the party leadership does not embrace this flank of the party?
Well, the party leadership did not support Mamdani in New York, and he won. Party leadership is not supporting Plattner in Maine, and I think he's going to win. So I think it is, I think there is a growing understanding that leadership and defending the status quo and the inequalities that exist in America is not where the American people are.
So that, as you all probably know, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, and he sort of took over a press conference that was going to be a press conference for Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in DC. And before Schumer took the stage, Senator Sanders came in, took the Democratic leadership, as you just heard, to task for not lending their support to now Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, and didn't do it when he was running, and we're going to hear what Schumer had to say in response. But first, Cenk, what have you got on this?
It made me think of what if Bernie was the Senate Minority Leader, let alone if he were other positions. But that's the type of message we need to hear, I believe. So we're going to get into here what does Schumer eventually say, but most importantly and interestingly, what are other Democrats saying today about Mamdani and about the direction of the Democratic Party and the things they say and in the things they don't say? So you'll see.
I sense this is going to be one of the episodes where you and I don't agree on every single thing we talk about.
Oh, no, we won't agree on this. We won't agree later on Pelosi. It'll be fun.
We'll agree in essence on this, but we won't agree fully on it. Well, anyway, stay tuned and you'll see. During Senator Sanders' pop-in at the Schumer press conference, Sanders also admitted that there is a clear divide within the Democratic Party, which of course we all knew, that was brought to the forefront again thanks to the election in New York. Here's Senator Sanders.
This guy started his campaign at 1% in the polls. I called it one of the great political upsets in the modern history of America, and I think that's really quite true. So who did he take on? He took on oligarchs who put millions and millions of dollars to try to defeat him. He took on the Republican establishment, and of course he took on the Democratic establishment.
But is the Democratic leader part of the old?
Why do you want to create? Look, obviously you have a Democratic establishment. I ran for president against the Democratic establishment. That's what Mamdani did. It's no great secret. That's what Alexandria did. No great secret. Of course there's an establishment. And of course there's a division within the Democratic Party. There's no secret to anybody here. What are we seeing in Maine? What did you see in New York City? What are you going to see all over this country? You're going to see progressives running, protecting the needs of the working class, taking on big money interests, fighting for an agenda that works for all, not just the few.
And he referenced Alexandria. That's, of course, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had some harsh words for the party on the night Mamdani won the race herself. And here is the representative.
He had to not just defeat a Republican. He had to defeat a Republican and the old guard of the Democratic Party at the same time. He was fighting a war on two fronts and not just one. And he still won resoundingly. And I think the message that sends is that the Democratic Party cannot last much longer by denying the future, by trying to undercut our young, by trying to undercut a next generation of diverse and upcoming Democrats that have the actual party, our actual electorate and voters support.
And despite never having endorsed Mamdani, refusing to say even who he voted for, Leader Schumer fully rejected that he is out of step with the Democratic base. And as the New York Times reported, Schumer still exudes confidence that he is an effective party leader, making unpopular decisions that these kinds of progressive figures don't have to face. He often points to the fact that he never faces any challenge to his leadership from the Senate Democratic caucus as a sign of his strength, even if this year he has seen his poll numbers in New York dip lower than they have in the past 2 decades, and that's very low. Right now, his popularity rating is underwater by 20 points, according to Real Clear polling. He was asked to respond to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's statement during his press conference yesterday. Here's what the minority leader had to say.
I'm moving forward. This morning, I talked with Mayor-elect Mamdani. We had a very, very good conversation. We said that we cared about New York City and that we look forward to working together to help the city and improve the city. I congratulated him on running a very, very good campaign. And the issue that he is stressed is being stressed by Democrats across the country, from one end of America to the other, the high costs that the Trump administration is imposing on us and their failure to do anything about it.
So, Cenk, we'll get to what some of the other Democrats had to say about all of this and about Mamdani's victory and about the victories that happened around the country. There's a similarity to the tone that some of the national figures struck. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about this, the axis of what Senator Sanders, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, and Senator Schumer had to say.
Yeah. So let me start off with some of our members and then I'll get into my commentary. Over 9,000 wrote in on TYT.com. They got burned. Ask him about establishment ghouls and he will spit some fire. Part of the reason I'm reading that to you guys is because I want you to know the context. Schumer was late to the press conference, so Bernie's just sitting there and they asked him a question about the establishment. So he's like, you want to ask a question? I'll tell you, right? I mean, what is he supposed to do, hide his feelings? No, of course. And Mr. In-Between said, taps Schumer on the shoulder and says, bounce, bitch. Okay, now Bernie didn't do that, okay, although that's a fun way of putting it. So look, several different things here. Schumer never endorsed, and Hakeem Jeffries endorsed like 3 minutes before the race was called. I'm exaggerating, but not by much, about last week or so after a long race. And the reason is obvious, their donors didn't want him to. And they're in the opposite camp of the Democratic Party. They're in the corrupt camp and Mamdani and Bernie are in the clean camp. And
although Bernie's an independent, he's not in the Democratic Party.
Well, okay. Yeah. And so that's not surprising. Is there, like, what I liked about that clip, Michael, was that Bernie's acknowledging something obvious, which he doesn't always do. Like there's been this unspoken war between establishments and progressives. It's spoken online all the time. On TV though, it's almost never mentioned. Like, because because in the past, what would happen is if a progressive said, yeah, of course there's an establishment, they say, oh, well, who do you think it is? Are you saying Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are the establishment? And then obviously the answer is yes, but then that's seen as some big affront to unity. Wait a minute. Here are the Democratic leadership that never endorsed Mamdani, who was a Democratic candidate. So obviously they never meant anything about unity. Whenever they said unity, they meant compliance. I think that one is inarguable. You could argue about the two sides and who's right, but at this point, we have empirical evidence, and we've had a lot of empirical evidence. When progressives are in trouble or challenged, the establishment never helps them, never. And whenever they feel they got an inch above progressives, they're like, you must obey, unity. So it's lies, 100% lies. I'm done with that. And by the way, Schumer should be done too. Now, I mean, Pelosi's gone now, Cuomo's gone, and AOC should primary Schumer for the New York Senate race, obviously, and drive him out and easily take that seat. That's my opinion.
I don't know that she'll have to primary. I think that Schumer will eventually just step down. I don't think that it's going to be a question of primary. I don't think he wants to get into a primary. I don't think he wants to lose a primary. I think that he's going to see how this shutdown thing pans out, and then I imagine he'll have a press conference where you learn a little bit about what his plans are. So
it's the AOC situation is interesting, Michael, because she must be thinking about running for president. Because if I'm her and I want it, and I'm not going to run for president, I want that Senate seat. It's a bigger role, obviously. And all you have to do is say, I'm coming, and Schumer will retire. I agree with you.
But in New York, a downstate challenge from progressive may not play as well. And it's interesting because also Kathy Hochul is now in the conversation, the governor of New York.
I think AOC would obliterate her.
I do too, except she's an upstate New Yorker. And she's also an upstate New Yorker who came out, as she should have, for Mamdani immediately and campaigned with him. And that's not what you would have expected from Governor Hochul.
She wasn't on his side in the primary, but she didn't have to be.
She didn't have to be. In a primary, you don't have to be on anybody's side. I mean, and it was a funny primary for her because she replaced Andrew Cuomo essentially when Andrew Cuomo went away. So it was a funny place for the governor to be. Interesting politics, actually. I think it was really good political theater. These leaders should have endorsed the Democrat who won there. I understand why they didn't, and that doesn't mean I sympathize with why they didn't. I get why they didn't. I don't think it's as much about money as you probably do. I don't think it's about the donors. Maybe in Schumer's case a little more than Jeffries' case it is. But I think that it's about a national strategy that the Democratic Party has, for better or worse, whether it works or it doesn't work, of saying we are not going to get ourselves caught up in what we view as being fringe types of issues. You hear Republicans ecstatic that Mamdani won because they can tie the national party to Mamdani. So what these national figures are doing are saying, yeah, we're okay with Mamdani winning. We don't want to get involved with it because we want to be able to A, raise money on it, and B, be able to run the types of national campaigns that we want to. Whether you agree with that or not,
no, I get it, Michael.
That's the strategy, and I get it. So that's it.
So look, normally I'd say it's almost always 98% about the money if it's not 100. But in this case, I understand what you're saying. It's probably 80-20, right? So they don't want to get labeled with a socialist label, stuck with it, right? But number one, it just won. I get it, it's New York City. I get it more than anybody, right? Now, having said that, why are you stuck with that label? I mean, mainstream media does this absurd thing where they're like, okay, one Democrat is a socialist and one in one of the most progressive cities in the country, okay? So that means all Democrats, you have to say whether you're a socialist or not. Why? And do you do that for Republicans? When Herschel Walker was running and he was mentally unstable, like, okay, Herschel Walker's mentally unstable. Are all Republicans mentally unstable? Are you for mental instability? He's talking about murdering people. Are you all for murdering? Well, Randy Fine's talking about murdering 2 million people in Gaza. So are they asking every single Republican, Randy Fine is a genocidal maniac, or does that mean you're a genocidal maniac? No, so this is a smear job by mainstream media. The way that I would fight against it, and you're not gonna be surprised by this, is I'd go over the top. I wouldn't be worried about that. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, we'll all be called socialists. I'd be like, hey, you're a reporter, right? You understand that Montana's not the same as New York? You understand that not every Democrat is the same? Like, do I have to explain that to you? Really? Really? But ask any question you like, because I'm here all day.
Yeah, right? and it is about the media. It's about the questions they ask and how they tell the story. And Tallarico, who's running in Texas, said that when he first came on the air as a candidate for the Senate seat, he was going on the air and everyone was saying, you're all asking me about LGBTQ and trans people in sports. No one has asked me about the cost of living. No one has asked me about immigration. No one has asked me about civil rights. No one has asked me about housing. They're all talking about that. So in fairness and in agreement with what you're saying, the media is carving this out because those are the questions they're asking and those are the connections they're drawing. So they will ask Hakeem Jeffries, would he endorse? Hey, what does it mean if the minority leader of the House of Representatives is endorsing someone who is a Democratic socialist? So somebody like Jeffries will say, I don't even want to bother with that, right? I don't even want to bother with that being associated that way. You could say that it's clownish, you could say that it's cowardly, it probably is both to a degree, but it also comes with a bit of strategy, which they will live or die by, you know?
Yeah, that kind of defensive posture drives me crazy.
Of course.
You're like, just go out and say who you are. There's nothing wrong with it. Here, look, I'll do it. I'm a capitalist, I'm not a socialist. I like Mamdani because he was for change and he was against the status quo. Or do I think that every one of his positions is gonna work? I don't know, let's find out. I'm not in favor of rent control, for example, and he wants to further rent control, just like with apartments that are already rent controlled, do a freeze on them. I don't think that that's gonna work that well. So what? So what? The brother won the Democratic primary, he's for change, so I'm in favor of him, right? That doesn't mean I am him. This is complicated. Is this complicated? Like sometimes I feel like with mainstream media, you have to talk slowly. And why are they trying to look at the point that Michael's making about the candidate where you said in Montana that was running, or Texas?
In Texas.
Yeah, and so they're constantly asking him culture war questions. Okay, why? Because mainstream media doesn't want to focus on what Mamdani was desperately trying to focus on, affordability. Because corporate media and corporate politicians love that it's not affordable. They love it. Because that's the corporations that are getting rich off of crushing us and making things unaffordable. And it's complicated, guys. It's not, there's no conspiracy. There's no, the cable news anchors don't get together with the Chamber of Commerce. I've talked a lot about this, it's groupthink, and where does that groupthink come from? It's invisible hand of the market. I wrote about it in Justice Coming, my book. But bottom line here is you're seeing it in action as you're seeing them constantly focus on culture war issues and things that divide us, and never really asking about the issues that the New York voters just told you are the most important.
Right, and all that matters is what the New York voters had to say, right? And he won resoundingly against a familiar name in Andrew Cuomo. I don't think Curtis Lewa had anything to do with what happened the other night. And now he's the mayor of New York. And listen, there have been, and Cenk and I off air talked about this the other night, there have been other mayors of New York who have challenged the establishment and been wildly unsuccessful mayors. I happen to think Mamdani is too smart to be dumb when he is mayor. David Dinkins challenged the establishment. He's a black borough president, Manhattan borough president in New York. Yes, he came up through a political machine in New York, but there were not a lot of citywide black figures who did well in that way. And of course, he was the first black mayor. And then Bill de Blasio, who came kind of out of nowhere as a very progressive candidate who came in with an arrogance that he could do whatever he wanted and was, while charismatic, unsuccessful. So I think that there is most definitely precedent for challenging the establishment in New York. But when leadership in Washington comes from New York, it's different. You have a New York senator who runs the minority in the Senate, and you have a New York representative from Queens, and Hakeem Jeffries, who runs the minority party in the House. They should have stood up. Now, unfortunately, Mamdani needs them more than he needs, more than they need him, because if Trump is going to make it difficult on him, he's going to have to find a way to get money and support from Congress, and that's the way it's going to shake out, at least for the next year, while that leadership team is in there. So on election night, though, there were other Democrats, many national Democrats, who congratulated the two candidates who won that night in other places, and some of the others on their victories, but didn't point to Mamdani. So consistent with what we've been talking about, Pete Buttigieg, former transportation secretary and mayor, he said New Jersey and Virginia have chosen well by electing Mikey Sherrill and Spanberger for Virginia. That's Abigail Spanberger as their next governors. They're proven leaders who won by focusing on what matters most, how politics and policy can make everyday life better and more affordable. Cory Booker put out a tweet, the senator from New Jersey, saying yesterday, "We showed that the power of the people is greater than the president in power," with the images of 4 headlines attached, none mentioning New York or Mamdani. You'll see Philadelphia with New Jersey. Philadelphia had in Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices that all won. New Jersey, they're a bedroom community for some New Jersey voters. They have Mikey Sherrill there, California, and Prop 50, the Dem redistricting, and Abigail Spanberger. There seemed to have been room. I think you could have lost the Across Philly and New Jersey headline there and put room for Mamdani winning. Cory Booker, though, did not do that in his tweet. Debbie Dingell, a member of Congress from Michigan, was asked about Mamdani on CNN. She immediately went right to Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill. Here is Debbie Dingell, their former colleague.
Do you have concerns about Mamdani and the labels that this affords Republicans being used as a weapon against Democrats?
Okay, Republicans tried to make Nancy Pelosi the enemy in years past. I'm going to focus on the election of Abigail Spanberger, who is clearly a moderate, as is Mikey Sherrill. Both women that had strong military and national intelligence background.
So, look, that was the example of what we were talking about, right? I mean, you had the CNN anchor asking the representative from Michigan, what about the socialist who just won, right? That's how they're framing this, and that's how, it's an interesting thing to talk about after a primary. He's the Democrat who won It's a mayor's race in New York. It's an interesting thing to talk about when that person is a candidate. Can a socialist win? You're a socialist. Can you win in New York City? Well, he proved that he can win in New York City. So it's an irresponsible question to still be asking. I get why they're asking, but if that's the lead question, that's terribly irresponsible. And Dingell, of course, talking about her former colleagues and the Democrats, as we talked about earlier in the segment, Cenk, talking about moderation. It seems to be a national plan. You're not going to agree with it. I'm not sure that I agree with it across the board, but I get the strategy. I get why they're trying it.
Yeah. So look, everyone's a little bit different place within the Democratic Party. I just keep saying, so what? So, and in terms of these Democrats that Michael just quoted, Art Garfunkel wrote about this a long time ago, called The Sound of Silence. So when it comes to Mamdani, no, don't say anything, don't say. There was a hilarious thing about Cory Booker. He's not backing Mamdani. They asked him about it, and he says, "Oh, well, New York is so far. I don't like to get involved in New York politics. Philly's a little further, and DC's definitely further. But yet you seem to be involved in their politics, right? So, all right, one last time. This is super simple. Chuck Schumer and I are in the same party. I'm a Democrat. He's a Democrat. Okay. Does that mean I agree with everything Chuck Schumer says? That's comical, right? I barely agree with anything he says. So what? So what? Not a complicated question here. And for the Democrats, look, that's why I say it's 80% about money. Because it isn't just like, hey, AOC won. When AOC won, a lot of them immediately flipped and were like, oh, okay, well, what am I gonna do, right? But they're not flipping here. They're not mentioning him. They're purposely avoiding him. Because yeah, of course, their donors would be super pissed. The donor class despises Mamdani. So that's why they're all nervous as hell. Like, don't say Mamdani. I got it. Come on, Cory Booker's the most obvious. Because okay, Debbie Dingell, her politics is confusing. I don't even know what to call her, right? And Buttigieg's corporate establishment 101, I get it. But Cory Booker's would sometimes pretend to be a progressive. So what would be the issue with Mamdani? Come on, get real.
Yeah, well, you can paint it pretty easily with money, and the fact that most of Cory Booker's or many of Cory Booker's constituents work in New York City every single day and make a lot of money doing it. And so there's obviously that connection, and he's a national candidate, and he's going to be extra careful, annoyingly so, as a U.S. senator in this case at least.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.